screwed up my entire life, and it's all my fault. Let me start from the beginning. I work on the 4th floor of the Madison building downtown. My job is fairly simple. I am the accountant of my company. My biggest form of exercise is pushing pencils and crunching numbers. Sometimes it gets really boring, and I even catch myself not even getting a single ounce of work done for days at a time. I often ask myself if this was truly worth the many years of college I attended to get the degree I worked for. If I knew it was going to be this boring, I would have joined my brother in the army. He may have been right about the dumb path that I chose for my life. Anyway, enough of the self-loathing. Let me tell you where I royally screwed the pooch. Like any other day, I was sitting at my desk in my office. I often have the blinds shut and the door locked so that nobody would bother me. My only form of communication in the building is with Kara, who emails me invoices. I've only met her one time, and I've even forgotten about how my boss looks. I was browsing on the computer when all of a sudden I decided to do more extracurricular things. I went to an adult website on the 5th page of Google. I know, pathetic, right? I was just looking for a way to pass the time. After searching for what felt like hours, I finally found the right video. It was a website that I've never heard of, but I figured it would do. My fear of getting caught was minimal because, like I said, the blinds and the door were taken care of. I clicked on the video and immediately was met with pop-ups. Being a single guy has led me to being the master of closing out pop-ups. As I closed the final one, I clicked on the video. I began watching only to find out that it was a 1-minute preview. In order to watch the full video, I had to create a premium account. I went to the website and began signing up. I entered my information and created the account. I went back to the video and I did what I had to do and closed out of the window as fast as I could. I sat there and decided that it was time for my lunch break. Even though it was only 10:30 in the morning, I had to leave the office out of boredom. It was a Friday and we had a day off on Monday for Memorial Day, so I really didn't want to be there any longer than I had to. When I returned to work on Tuesday, I received an email saying that my 72-hour free trial was up and that the card on file would be charged $69.95 a month. I didn't think much of it and was willing to eat the cost. Maybe I could find some more videos and cancel later. That was until I noticed that it was the company credit card that it was charged on the email's invoice. My blood instantly turned to ice as I realized my mistake. At the bottom of the email there was a customer support email address for me to contact for cancellation. I double-clicked that link like my life depended on it. I filled out the email with cancellation as the subject. I had written a long email about how I made a mistake by adding my company credit card and not my personal credit card, and I only used the website for one video. I must have said sorry at least a dozen times. I sent my concerned email and waited for what felt like days for a response. About 15 minutes later, I got a response email stating that of course I could cancel my membership. However, I had to pay a convenient cancellation fee to get the transaction off of my company's invoice. I hadn't thought about that, so of course I panicked even more because Kara would flag it and send it to her boss as fraud. I was willing to pay anything to make it go away. And that is what I said in my email response. They emailed me back instantly and told me the grand total to get it expunged from the credit card statements would cost me $50,000. My jaw was on the floor when I read that number. I didn't have that kind of money. I sent an email back asking them to please have mercy and for me to pay a lower amount. I told them that I was only 25 years old and still paying off student loan debt as well as paying for my rent. I didn't have 50 grand just lying around. Their response almost gave me a heart attack. It was a video link that I hesitated but clicked on anyway. It was footage of me from my webcam watching the video and enjoying myself in my office, my face 100% exposed. The text underneath the video said, "We have all the leverage, we know who you are, we know who you work for, and we have your boss's private email. Send us the money before the next credit card statement, or your perverted little secret will be exposed to the entire building." It was signed in the Sky Entertainment. I knew that the next statement would not be out for another 2 weeks, so that meant I had 2 weeks to come up with 50 grand or I would be in the deepest amount of trouble I've ever been in my life. One moment that was a lapse in judgment could ruin my entire life. I checked my balance in my account and I only had about $5,000. I could drain my account and somehow find the difference. I didn't want to upset my parents by asking for such a huge loan, so I figured I could call my brother Andy. I hadn't talked to him since his birthday in March, but I could use all the help I can get. I texted him and asked him if he called me during my lunch break. He said he had about 15 minutes to squeeze me in, but he accepted. After a few hours of waiting agonizingly, it was time for lunch, so I called him up. I didn't tell him all of the details. I just told him that I needed $45,000 for a business expense. I promised him I would pay him back. He then explained to me that $45,000 was no chump change, and that he would only help me out a little bit. He offered $10,000, and told me if I didn't pay it back within a year, he was going to charge 50% interest. I agreed to his terms, because I don't have another choice. I was pissed about how he talked down to me, but I did deserve it. He said he would mail me the check and it would be sent to me in a couple of days. I spent the next few days finding anything that I could sell online. I was able to sell my entire Pokemon card collection to somebody on Facebook for $3,000. I felt like a part of my childhood died, but that was on me. I sold my car that my dad gave me for graduation to a car lot for $17,000. I hated it, but I could easily just take the bus to work if I get up early enough. So with the loan from Andy and some of the things that I've sold, I was able to whittle it down to $20,000 remaining. I only had 5 days left, but I was confident that I could find a way. I just wasn't happy with how I had to do it. My mother has in her possession my great-grandmother's wedding ring that survived with her through the Holocaust. She would always talk about how it was worth $25,000 that was more than enough for me to pay off my debt. So I decided to Uber to my parents' house for dinner. My mom is smart, but she showed Andy and I where the ring was when we were kids. She had it in a shoebox buried inside one of the shoes. The ring was wrapped in a cloth. After dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom and went hunting for the ring. As I began to go through every single shoebox with the fine-tooth comb, I finally stumbled upon the ring. As I was taking it out of the shoe, my dad walked in and asked, "Son, what do you think you're doing?" I had told him that I was in big trouble and that I needed the ring to pay off the rest of my debt. He was in shock that eventually turned to anger on his face. "Damn it, if you were in trouble, why didn't you just ask for help?" He stared at me and also said, "Does this have anything to do with the loan you asked for from your brother?" I knew he was gonna snitch on me, but I couldn't lie and told him yes it was. He asked me how much I needed and I told him. He sighed at me and had me follow him into the kitchen, but not before he told me to put the ring back where I found it. He pulled out his checkbook and wrote me a check for the difference. He handed me my ticket to freedom. He looked at me and said, "I'm not mad, I'm just extremely disappointed in you. I don't know what sort of trouble you're in, but you could have just asked and I would have taken care of you." I felt the lump in my throat from the shame as I took the check from his hand. "And like your brother, if you don't pay me back within a year, you owe me 50% interest." I guess that's where my brother got his negotiating tactics from. And just like with my brother, I couldn't help but agree. On the day the money was due, I had transferred everything into my bank account. I went back to the website and put my bank information in as well as the amount that I owed. I was sweating bullets the entire time waiting for the confirmation screen to load. My transaction was approved, followed by an email with just one line of text that said, "You made a wise choice, pay better attention next time you pervert." Once again was signed Thigh in the Sky Entertainment. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but only for an instant, because I knew the strain that I put on myself with my relationship with my family. One mistake led me to this, and it is a shame that I will feel for the rest of my life. The juice was not worth the squeeze.
I am a retired police detective that started my own business online. Folks all around the country hire me as a private investigator, a hacker, or for the occasional event security. I'm pretty fair with my pricing and I haven't had any complaints yet. My last endeavor almost had me question what I do for a living, Not that I was doing anything bad. There are some things that you see that you should not in this life. Here's where the story begins. I'm going to give you a heads up. Some of it ain't pretty. One morning, I woke up, took a shower, and poured me a gigantic cup of coffee to start my day. I go down to the basement where my office is to check my emails. It had been a slow week, so I was hankering for any kind of action. I had one email where the subject line simply was "Help, my professor is unfair." It sounded interesting, so I clicked on the email. When I opened it, it read, "Hello, Detective Rhodes. My name is Jennifer, and I believe I am in need of your services. I am currently attending college at Bowling Green, and my English professor claims that I did not turn in my paper on time. However, I did. I tried to explain to him that my dorm lost power for a few minutes when I tried to submit my paper. He has a no-excuse policy and told me that it wasn't in the system. I was wondering if there was a way you could hack into his computer and paper in the appropriate folder. His name is Dr. Lorenzo Richards, and he is the head of the English department. That's all the information that I can give you. Below is a transaction of half your fee, and you will receive the other half after your work is done. Thank you in advance, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Regards, Jennifer." It seemed pretty simple, and plus she had already paid me half. Also, it didn't hurt that it was something to do. Just to be safe, I will not give you the details on how I hacked into his system, but for me, it was a piece of cake. I was able to get on his computer, and I found the assignment folder when I opened it. There was Jennifer's paper sitting there as clear as day. I had even made multiple copies of it just to get his attention. I snickered to myself as I closed out of the folder. Right before I was about to log off, I did notice an interesting folder that was hidden. It needed a password to open, which once again was not hard for me to do. When I opened it, my heart skipped when I saw what was inside. This guy had a folder filled with pictures of his female students. Some of them were simple screenshots off of their Instagram or taken off of their Facebook accounts, but some of the students were naked or doing sexual acts. By the looks of them, they were not aware of their pictures being taken either. Once again, just to be safe, I copied his entire computer onto an external hard drive. I had incriminating evidence of a perverse professor. I'm not sure how old all the girls were in those photos, but regardless, I wanted to vomit. I had seen a lot of things in my day working for the police force, but running into things like these just makes me queasy. As I reached for my phone to call the police, I received another email. It wasn't from Jennifer, but from an unknown source. No subject line, but it read, "Are you there, detective? If so, meet me at Gypsy's Diner at 12 noon and bring that hard drive." I could feel the blood draining from my body as I read that email. What I should have done was instantly contacted my buddy Joseph at the local police department. However, if this rabbit hole went deeper, I wanted to explore it just in case there was meat on the bone. I had no choice but to meet this person at the diner. The diner was only a 10-minute drive away from my house, so I left early and told my wife I was going out to run errands. I pulled up to the diner to see if I could scope out who was walking in and out as I sat in my car for about 20 minutes. I didn't see any unusual person coming in or out, so I took a deep breath and walked inside. I was greeted by the hostess, and I told her I was meeting someone. I looked over to my left, and I had an arm gesturing for me to come to them with their back towards me. I sat in the booth across, and of course it was the professor. The waitress walked over and poured me a coffee and walked away. "Well, detective, you've been a busy man, haven't you?" he stated as he took a sip of his black coffee. "I have a proposal for you. You could either give me that hard drive and forget what you saw, and I write you a check for $100,000 for your troubles. Or you don't give me the hard drive and I leak the information about why you truly had to retire from the police force to the public. Which means you'll never work for anyone for any reason ever again. Not even security at the mall. So, which is it, detective?" I was in awe at his offer/threat. How could he have possibly known about why I was forced to retire? I had that taken off my record a long time ago. I was indeed dealing with a madman. If he truly knew the reason I was fired, my life would be ruined. Not even my wife knows what happened. I didn't know what else to say as I sat there staring at him. I really didn't have a choice as I slid the hard drive towards him on the wooden table. He took it from me and reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out his checkbook and wrote my name and the $100,000 amount. He signed it and told me that I made the wise choice. He took one more sip of his coffee and slapped a $20 bill on the table before he walked out. In the parking lot, I saw him throw the hard drive on the ground and stomp on it to smithereens. He got into his car and left with a smirk on his face. I sat in that booth for hours. I had multiple missed calls from my wife and an email from Jennifer asking for an update. I told her that a family emergency came up and I couldn't go through with the job. I returned her money to her Cash App and apologized for not completing the task. I called my wife back and told her that I would be home soon and I had something to tell her. I've been living with this lie for over 15 years. It was time she knew why I was let go. She's ready to know. She's earned it. I got home and she already had a pot of coffee waiting for me at the kitchen table. She looked concerned, which she had every right to be. I pulled out my chair and sat down. I had told her about the real reason for my retirement. Right as I was about to confess, we heard a knock at the door. It was UPS with a delivery. It was addressed to my wife. All it was an envelope with a note and a flash drive. The note read to Mrs. Rhodes. Your husband has not been honest with you on this flash drive is the security footage of the real reason he was discharged. He's been married to you for all these years and has never told you. I don't even know you personally, but I am telling you more of the truth than he ever would. I have to warn you ahead of time what you are about to watch is extremely graphic, but very real. It was signed Regards the Ghost of Christmas Past. She began to look at me with a glare. I begged her not to watch the video, and to hear me out she denied my request and instantly went to her computer. She inserted the flash drive into the USB port and opened the folder titled Classified. The folder consisted of only one video as she clicked on it. All I could do was stand there and wait for the oncoming train. The video began with grainy black and white security footage. The timestamp was the night of Christmas 2010. A man ran out of the back door of an electronics store. In his possession, he had multiple brand new iPhones and Galaxies. Out of the bottom right corner comes myself and my partner, Officer Jacobs. We both draw our guns and tell him to put down the merchandise, surrender, and drop to his knees with his hands behind his head. He complied. Even though the footage was grainy, you could still see how scared his face was. Just as Jacobs walked over to arrest him, I draw my gun and shoot 2 bullets into the perpetrator's chest. My partner stares at me and asks me what the fuck did I just do? The video cut to black and the professor appears. He once again addresses my wife and tells her what a liar I am and how I had manipulated her for over 15 years. He said I went snooping in places I shouldn't have and this was my reward. He apologized for getting her involved and told her she had to make the ultimate decision before the camera cut off. My wife is in tears at this time and tells me to get my shit and to get the fuck out of her house. I felt so ashamed, but I didn't fight it because I know that I deserved what I got. I didn't hesitate as I started packing. I know that she will never forgive me and I made my bed now I need to lie in it. Evil truly won today, and I am ashamed that this is how it all ended for me. Don't ever go toe to toe with an experienced hacker. Your life could be ruined in an instance like mine was.
Hello Reddit, my name, or rather my username is darkprincess_666. Yeah, I know, edgy. For the past few years I have been taught how to get other people's IP addresses. Most of the time it's the run-of-the-mill friend trying to prank another friend, and once I actually was able to track down the mistress of a cheating husband. However, the story I'm sharing on the subreddit today goes a little darker than that. I was actually able to help my local police department find the killer of a cold case from 2005. Ahead of time I will tell you it does get graphic, and if your stomach is weak, might I suggest watching Moana instead. Let's dive into the story. I was in my apartment, listening to Under Oath and coding my website. I heard a knock at the door, and when I answered, there were 2 police officers that wanted to speak to me. My stomach instantly dropped because though I was careful, I did do some shady things online to assist others. They asked to come in and I obliged. I offered them coffee and cookies, but they told me that it wasn't a social call. One of my clients broke our agreement and told the cops who I was. I half expected them to take me away in handcuffs, but instead they dropped a case file on my coffee table. It was the cold case that was the murder of Bianca Valles. They told me it had been over 20 years since it was looked at. I opened it and saw the crime scene photos where she was murdered in her own bed with her arms and legs restrained to the bed frame, her throat was slit, and unfortunately, she was raped before and after her death. DNA evidence was not found at the crime scene. The only thing that was left behind was a receipt for a copy of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas for the PS2 from a local game shop. A credit card was used to complete the transaction, however. Inside a clear baggie was the physical copy of the receipt. It was crumbled up and had blood stains on it. I asked them why they wanted my help and they said that I could be the person for the job to finally close the case. They said in return, they would pardon me for all of my past vigilante work. I had no other choice but to help with the investigation. They let me keep the case file and told me they would be back in 48 hours, so either get results or arrested. I glanced over at the badge of one of the officers and it read Valles. I don't think he noticed, but I could tell that these were 2 rogue cops. Besides not wanting to get arrested, I wanted closure for his family. So I got to work. As I sat at my desk, I examined the receipt and saw the date, time, and store the game was purchased, as well as the last 4 digits of the credit card number. I took a deep breath as I hacked into the store's computer system. I was able to get the search down to a 1-hour block from that day. They only had 4 customers in that time block. 3 of them were cash transactions and only 1 credit card. I was able to get it down to the sole customer. I looked at the credit card number and the last 4 digits lined up correctly to the receipt. The credit card belonged to Joseph Contreras. I had never heard that name before, so I began to dig a little deeper. When I tell you nothing came up about this guy, you would have thought that I was hunting for a ghost. He was on the honor roll all through his school career, and not even a speeding ticket came up on his criminal record. What was puzzling is the fact that someone like him would even come up in a situation like this. Nonetheless, I was able to access his IP address, and was able to hack into his webcam. What I saw there will haunt me for the rest of my life. The webcam showed me an unfinished basement with a bunch of Christmas decorations, boxes, and a stack of old newspapers, things like that. What made it terrifying was a woman that was strung up by her feet and wrapped in saran wrap. Her mouth also duct taped shut. Her eyes were closed, so I couldn't even tell you if she was alive or not. Just as I zoomed in, I jumped scared myself when she began to flail and scream as heavy footsteps could be heard coming down the stairs. Slowly, a man came into the frame. He was wearing a hoodie with his face covered with a cheap skeleton mask. He began to shush the girl and called her Veronica. He told her it would all be over soon and that she would be reunited with her cousin shortly. He was fidgeting with a meat cleaver and raised it above his head. He then noticed the light on his webcam was on. He walked over, looked into it, and laughed as he destroyed it. I lost video, but I did have his location. I began looking for any missing person named Veronica, and I found Veronica Valles, who had been missing for 2 weeks. That might be why the officers reopened the investigation. Another family member was in danger. Sure enough, Bianca was her cousin. They had been best friends up until her untimely death. Swiftly, I picked up my phone and called Officer Valles. I told him that I was able to track down his sister's murderer and the killer had his missing cousin, and that the suspect was Joseph Contreras. His location was in the middle of the woods in an abandoned cabin. It was 2 stories with a basement according to the blueprints I found online as well. Valles immediately thanked me and hung up the phone. I tried finding any outlet to hack into so I could see or hear anything that was going on. I was able to get into Valles' body cam. From there I could see him and his partner speeding down the freeway with their lights and sirens blaring. They were weaving past cars and calling for backup at the same time. He had said the cabin was a 10-minute drive away on the outskirts of town, and he vowed that Contreras was his and he was going down. After watching for what felt like an hour, they eventually arrived at the cabin. They had turned the lights and sirens off ahead of time along with another squad car pulling up around the same time. He said the plan was to go in quietly and get Veronica out safely before apprehending the suspect. They walked to the back of the cabin and found the cellar door. It was chained up. The lock had rusted a long time ago, so it was taken off without an issue. They slowly opened the doors and proceeded down the stairs. As they walked all the way down, there was no sign of Contreras. Veronica was still there hanging. She was bloody with slashes all over her body, but she was still alive. She looked over to Valles and was in tears, but her voice was muffled as she tried to speak. Valles told her to be quiet as he removed the tape from her mouth. He asked her where the key to her chain was. She told him it was in the top right desk drawer. Valles walked over quietly to the desk. The computer was completely smashed on top of the desk. As he opened the drawer, he found the key. He proceeded to walk quietly over to Veronica and unlock her restraints. He pulled her down and over his shoulder. She screamed in pain and began to sob once again. He handed her over to his partner to have him take her upstairs. He did so, but it felt like an eternity as he gingerly walked up the steps up to the surface. Officer Valles was on the lookout for Contreras. He was sweeping every corner of the basement, but he was nowhere to be found. Suddenly the hatch for the basement slammed shut and it became pitch black in the basement. Laughter could be heard. Officer Valles was trapped all alone in the basement with Contreras. Valles grabbed his flashlight with his pistol still in his dominant hand. An LED beam of light swept the darkness. My heart was racing with each sweep. Then out of nowhere the beam shined on Contreras. He screamed as he raised his butcher's knife, running towards the officer. Valles emptied his entire clip into him as his body, riddled with bullets, slammed to the floor. He was dead, and so was his reign of terror. Officer Valles walked up to a mirror with his flashlight shining. All he said before the basement doors opened to reveal light was, "Sabrina, thank you." He walked up the stairs and turned off his body cam. I began to cry tears of joy and relief. I was able to help solve a cold case, but the best part was I was able to get closure for a grieving family.
Most people in this life would kill to have a bank account with 8 figures or even more. I was able to achieve access to an account just by cracking a few passwords on a banking app. You see, while most kids my age are playing Fortnite or doom scrolling through TikTok, I was able to figure out how to hack through YouTube videos and a few other avenues. At first, the satisfaction of having access to a multi-millionaire's account before I even graduated high school was exhilarating. That was until I found out who I was truly stealing from, and now I feel constantly that my life is in danger. Let me go into more detail. On the weekends, I usually spend time at my grandma's house while Dad works out of town. My mom left when I was only 3 years old, and that is when my grandma stepped in to be a co-parent with my father. So when I would go over to my grandma's house, she would just leave me to my own vices. At one point, I had told her that her internet needed to be upgraded, which she did for me so that I could have faster internet at her place. I usually spent my time hacking into my friends' Facebook profiles and posting inappropriate links that could get them put in Facebook jail for a couple of weeks, with the occasional hack into Netflix with a VPN so I could watch movies restricted in the United States. Late one evening, my grandma let me know that she had picked up KFC for us for dinner. As she was scrolled through her phone at the dinner table, she came across an article about a CEO that was officially worth $25 million. She just rolled her eyes because the CEO was the son of the former CEO, and the only reason he had the rise to power is because of who his father was. His name was Timothy Carlyle. His father Thomas had died and left him at least half of that $25 million. She sighed as she took another sporkful of mac and cheese. I finished eating and excused myself from the table. I went on to Google and did a little bit more research on Carlyle. His company was the new up-and-coming counterpart to Tesla. It was called Helix. Their self-driving cars could potentially get double the mileage that Musk's Teslas can on one charge. He might have been worth $25 million, but that could increase 100-fold within the next 5 years. That is if the company's projections were correct. That would make him a billionaire before I am even old enough to drink. A part of me was angry about that fact, with a slight case of jealousy. I won't go into detail on how I did it, but I was able to track down which banking app he uses to the point where I was even able to get his credit card information. I was also able to get his bank account and routing number. I couldn't believe my eyes as I took a screenshot of the card he had on file at the last hotel he stayed in Tokyo. The next day, just to try it out, I created an account on the Domino's app. I ordered 2 pizzas, all with extra cheese, a pepperoni, 2 lava cakes, a 2-liter of Dr. Pepper, and an order of garlic Parmesan wings. I also left a $100 tip. I got to the checkout portion of the app and typed in the information. I sat there for a minute and watched it process. I was approved, and less than an hour later I had food to last me a week. The driver told me to thank my dad for the huge tip as I grabbed the food. I just smirked as I closed the door. Grandma got back from grocery shopping and was shocked to see all the food sitting on the kitchen counter. I told her I wanted to treat her to dinner for always taking care of me. When she asked where I got the money for all the food, I simply told her that I had money saved up for my birthdays and Christmases. She thanked me as we started eating. The next morning, Dad picked me up and asked me if I had a good weekend with Grandma, like he always asked, and I gave him the response I always did: yeah, we had a blast. As we went home, he stopped by a gas station to pump some gas and grab a 6-pack of Coors Light. While he was in the store, I got on Dad's phone and opened his banking app. He only had a $200 in his savings account, so I took it upon myself to give him a big surprise. I transferred money into his account from Carlyle's account. That $200 turned into $200,000. Attached to the transaction was a message that simply read "Company Bonus." I waited patiently for his reaction when he got back. As he got back in the truck, he grabbed his phone and opened his bank app. He told me he was checking to see if he had enough to get us dinner before kickoff of Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys were on tonight, and he never misses a game. His eyes were huge when he saw the amount in his account. He said he had never seen that much money in that account in his entire life. My dad was a hard worker, and he deserved way more than his shitty boss would give him. He told me since it was a Sunday, he wouldn't be able to call the bank until tomorrow to sort this out. But until then, he said, porterhouse steaks and fully loaded baked potatoes were for dinner. I've never seen him so happy in my life. The next morning felt amazing. I had the best dinner of my life, and it didn't hurt that the Cowboys beat the Eagles the night before. As I got up to get ready for school and Dad for work, a knock came at our front door. There were two men dressed in black suits looking for my dad. He told them who he was and invited them into the house. As they sat on our couch, Dad pulled up a chair and asked them what the visit was for. They said they were from the IRS and they needed to talk to him about the $200,000 that went into his bank account. He told them that he had no idea where the money came from, and that the only message he got was that it was from a supposed company bonus. The agents did not believe him, so he pulled out his phone to show them the message. They grew more suspicious as they told my dad that he needed to go with them to the police station for some questioning. All my dad said was that he needed to call his boss and tell him he wasn't coming in today. He did just that as he told me to go to school and that he would see me tonight. He also said that he loved me and that everything was gonna be all right. I waited for the bus and then went to school. My heart was pounding because I know that my dad had nothing to do with it and it was my fault, but I was too afraid to say anything. That day at school dragged on as the minutes felt like hours. I texted my dad to see if he was home yet around lunchtime. He texted me back and said he was home and that we needed to talk when I got home. My blood turned to ice when I read that text at the lunch table. Did he figure it out? Did the IRS pin me as the suspect? My head was spinning with all these questions that kept popping up. I was almost too afraid to go home after school. When I got home, Dad was sitting in the living room drinking a Coors Light. He told me to sit down so that we could have a chat. I obliged and sat across from him. He asked me if I knew anything about a CEO named Timothy Carlisle. I told him I in fact knew who he was. Dad said that the agents informed him that somebody hacked into Carlisle's account and transferred him that money. He was able to get Carlisle on the phone as they sorted out the money issue. He was very angry towards my dad and told him that if anything like this happened again that he would be locked away forever. My dad had tears in his eyes and I've never seen him so upset. I had to come clean and told him everything. His emotions turned to anger as he threw a half-empty can of beer across the living room. He told me what I did was extremely stupid and that it could have cost him his life. I told him how sorry I was and that he had nothing to worry about because it was on me, not him. He told me I didn't understand the gravity of the situation and to never do something so fucking stupid ever again. I promised him as he embraced me with a hug and an apology for his outburst. I shed a single tear as we hugged because my dad deserved so much more than what life gave him. The next morning I woke up for school. I had a text from an unknown number that read, "I know who you are, ... Check your email." My heart began to jump out of my throat as I dropped my phone and got on my computer. There I had over a dozen emails, also from an unknown sender. I read each one and they each contained something different. One was a scanned copy of my school schedule. Another was a Google Street View of my dad's house, and so on. The last email was a screenshot of my Domino's receipt, which included my grandma's address. I felt the blood drain from my body. Dad was right. I had done something stupid, and now the two people I loved the most could be in danger. Just then, another email came in. It said, "Meet me at Glen Park at 5:30, or Daddy and Grandma get it." I was afraid, but I was determined to end this once and for all. I went to school, which felt like a drag. When it was finally over, I went home. Dad was getting off at 4, so I was only alone for 30 minutes. When he got home, I told him again how sorry I was and that I loved him. He told me he loved me too. I excused myself to my room to do homework, or so Dad thought. I waited for about an hour and then snuck out of my bedroom window to head towards the park. After 20 minutes, I waited on a picnic table for any sign of human life. Eventually, I saw an SUV pull up in the parking lot. A man was climbing out of the back seat with an armed security guard. It was Carlisle. He looked pissed, but he still smirked at me as he was walking towards me with his hair slicked back and aviator shades on. He was wearing a navy blue coat and suit and black leather gloves. He was intimidating. He finally approached me and sat across from the table. He waved off his security guard, who walked back to the SUV. As he took off his sunglasses, he tucked them into his coat pocket. Well, he started to say. "It's nice to finally meet you," he said as he grinned from ear to ear. The feeling was not mutual at all. "I understand that you are a self-proclaimed computer genius, no?" he asked me. I just shrugged and continued staring at him. "I believe that you are a very intelligent little boy, and your efforts should be applauded. However, you took a lot of money from me, and I want it back. I could hire someone to really ruin your life, so I want you to think hard about it. I will give you 24 hours from now to return every cent left. If you don't comply, then the two most important people in your life will perish and you will be an orphan. If that happens, I will adopt you as my own son, and I don't think you or I really want that, you little prick. Because if I do that, your life will be a living hell and there is nothing you can do about it." He then put his shades back on and walked back to his SUV. I sat there for an hour before I had the strength to move. I headed back to this house and played different scenarios in my head. Each of them were a disaster. There wasn't another way I could get out of this. That was until I had an idea. It was risky, but it was my only option. I was going to give him the money back in full, but I wasn't going down that easy. I searched countless forums all over the internet. I finally felt it was necessary to gain access to the dark web. There I made an inquiry to a private investigator. I told him my situation and that I needed any dirt on Carlisle. It cost me $3,000, which I actually had saved up from Christmases and birthdays. It was a Hail Mary, but he told me that I would get a response from him in a day or two. After I finished contact with him, I transferred all the money back to Carlisle. I attempted to get some sleep, but I just laid there in bed until the sun came up. Around 6:45, I received another email from Carlisle. It read, "You made a wise decision. Now keep your fucking nose out of my business. P.S. Don't try anything stupid. I am monitoring you." I was nervous because of the investigator I hired, and if he knew about that, I guess I'd have to wait and see. The couple of days felt like a century, but I finally heard back from the investigator. He had sent me a secure PDF file of all of Carlisle's dirty business dealings, hush money scandals, and anything else that was swept under the rug. This was my ticket to freedom. So I leaked the documents to my local news stations, which lead to the top stations in the state, which eventually led to the whole country. Carlisle was dead in the water. His stocks plummeted, his wife left him, and his reputation took such a big hit that no one wanted to do business dealings ever again with him. I'm sure he would recover somehow, but for now the day belonged to me. I could hear from my grandma's phone, "Breaking news, Timothy Carlisle's dirty past comes into the light. Funds were misused, and multiple women's silence for money is just the tip of the iceberg. More news to come on the 10 o'clock broadcast." I sat there chewing a chicken fried steak with a smile on my face. My grandma was shocked and told me that she knew he wasn't as great as he presented himself to be. Later that week, I sold my computer and my other electronics. My hacking days were over before they ever began. Just like his recovery, Carlisle would probably come after me again for ruining his image, but I didn't care. I could take him. I would stake my life on it.